Welcome to our speaker series. This year we're focusing on entrepreneurs. And my name is Rick Revore. I'm director of our Sandbolt Center for Ethical Leadership in the School of Business and Technology. This event is sponsored by the Sandbolt Center. The center was created through a gift from Minnesota Power to honor its retiring chairman and CEO, Sandy Sandbolt. I'm delighted to introduce my friend, Greg Benson, today. He's an entrepreneur who's had an incredible impact locally, nationally, and internationally. Greg is founder and CEO of Lal Designs, based here in Duluth. He's an entrepreneur that's helping Duluth thrive. He's employing a good number of people in Duluth. He's creating jobs. He's creating products that are good for our environment, and he gives back to the community. He and his wife, Bridget, have been very supportive of our schools in Duluth. They've helped fund the creation of COGS, the mountain biking system that runs throughout Duluth, and they've supported many other causes. Greg is playing an important role in creating a community for young people like you that they want to live in and stay here in Duluth. Greg, welcome, and thanks for speaking to our group today.
Thanks, Rick. It's a nice introduction. He's mostly right. Covers some of that. Thanks for having me here today. And Rick offered me $20,000 to speak today, and I said, just buy everybody lunch. So that would work better. So my name's Greg Benson, and I'm one of the co-founders. This is me doing a cannonball. And we actually have 3 companies in Duluth. It's Lal Designs, Epicurean, and Textural, and I'll talk about those. So those 3 companies, people always want to know who's the parent company or which one are the other ones under. And we came up with this term, good sheet, to just talk about when we're referring to our 3 companies, we say they're good sheet. And you can probably figure out where that came from. So we're 100 employees, actually more like 104 now, and they're not all in Duluth. We have a few outside of the area. We have 3 facilities in West Duluth with 60,000 square feet of manufacturing and office space. We just purchased another 60,000 square foot building in Superior. So really, but we haven't moved in there yet, but more like 120 with that. This will be our 19th year next year, and we are focused on an international marketplace. We don't just think of Duluth much. I mean, we do a lot because we live here, but our sales are not based on the Duluth market. And really, it's a design and manufacturing company is what we do, and of course sales, because you got to do that. So how did I get right here today? So that was me in 1990. I guess I'm going to show you a lot of pictures where I'm in the air because it looks cool, I guess. But this is who started this company. My brother on the right, who wanted to look like Fabio, and then Tony Ciardelli and myself. And the skating picture I just showed. So Rollerblade Inc. Not rollerblades as in the skates, but the company that made the skates started in my neighbor's garage in Bloomington, Minnesota, and that was in the late 70s. And this guy right here, Tony, his sister ended up marrying that guy, the guy who founded Rollerblade, and that grew from their garage to a $200 million company that was international. And so somehow we got involved, not because we were skaters so much, but we ended up working for the company. And I worked for the company in Southern California doing sales and events. And we started doing these skate ramps. There were skate ramps around. And I could skate on a skate ramp, but I don't ever tell anyone I was a skater turned entrepreneur. That's not how it went. But we got involved in setting up these skate ramps. So the skaters here aren't any of us, but we started building these ramps. And we would go for Rollerblade Inc. and we'd set these ramps up in cities all over the country. This is the Minneapolis Convention Center, but we did quite a few of these events. And when we go to these events, all these kids would show up, and not that these are all kids, but this was in the early 90s and up until 97 when we started our company. And they'd show up and they'd all say, we need a skate park in our town. And so if you go back to the 90s like that, it really was mostly rollerbladers, it wasn't skateboarders. And they were saying, we need skate ramps. So my brother and my other partner and I, it wasn't that difficult to say, well, why don't we start building skate parks? Because we figured out how to build these ramps. And I learned how to do that by attending UMD and getting a degree in English literature and geography. So they teach you how to build skate ramps. So we came up with this company. We called it True Ride. The idea there was the ramp would have a true ride. And we started building stuff like this. And this was actually one of our first installations for a city in Toledo, Ohio. And we really worked with cities. So we worked with park and rec departments, mayors, city councils, and they'd always have a group of skaters that would get involved, but we didn't work directly with skaters. When you start a business, you want to have a mantra. So we came up with this one from a Bob Dylan lyric. If something's not right, it's wrong. You can see Bob in the clouds there, playing harmonica. In Minnesota, the best place to start a business, everybody knows, I'm sure Rick's taught you this, is in Hamel. And so we ended up out in Hamel. We all lived in Minneapolis, but we couldn't afford space in Minneapolis, so we moved out to Hamel. And we got this little shop out there. And one of the things when you start a construction company, and you don't have any money or any employees, it's just you. So you have to get on your knees and make things. And so I like this slide because this will be our 19th year next year, but I literally spent 4 years, not every day, but every week, 4 years on my knees walking around the shop cutting out ramps. So I think the story there is, you got to be willing to make some sacrifices to get somewhere else. And so we would make these ramps by hand. So we'd draw them by hand, and we had a big sort of a compass that we'd scribe radiuses with. And then we'd just start cutting them out. And the ramps would be from a foot tall to 14 feet tall, so it's hard to really standardize things. We tried to make, sort of custom ramps and creative shapes and things that you could skate on too. You can easily build a ramp that you can't skate on. So every day this is what would happen. This is our shop, and we'd build ramps all day, and they'd go outside and we'd take up all the parking spaces, and our neighbors hated us because they couldn't park in their spaces. So these were all just these modular ramps that we would put together. I'm going to go past that one. Well, I'll go back. I don't know if this is really going to start. So this is just like a montage of some parks that we did, and it's not going to run, so that's okay. So we started building these ramps, and we were doing it mostly all over Minneapolis. We had a few jobs in Chicago, and we really didn't want to be in Hamel. And so my brother and I had bought homes up here when we went to UMD, and we thought, well, why not move back to Duluth? So we found this old missile base. I don't know, does anyone know about the missile base in Duluth? It's up on the Berquist Road, about 12 miles up the shore. There was 28 nuclear-tipped missiles up there. We only found one that was still operational. And but this was the facility where they missed these missiles kind of look like fighter jets. They had little wings and a tail. And there's another picture. The silos are all over here. But this was Cold War stuff, so it wasn't obviously being used anymore. So we got a different shop. This was some of the crew at the time. I'm not really even sure what year. This was probably about 2000 by this time. And so now we had more people obviously working for us, and they had to work on their knees also because that's the way you did it. And this shop, this missile base that we were at was built in the 50s. It wasn't a real nice facility, but it had space. But as we worked there, we went from 6,000 square feet to 25,000 square feet. And that was a real big benefit to us to be able to expand without moving. Anytime you're going to move a business, it really adds a lot of cost and work. So we really didn't want to work on our knees either. So we knew bringing some technology in was going to help. So we brought in, and we also needed marketing materials. When you sell something, you got to show someone what you're going to sell them. And we had pictures of parts that we built, but we were always designing new stuff. So we brought in 3D modeling. This is AutoCAD, and we could make these pictures of parts. So now we can show a city, here's what we're going to build. We can work with the skaters in the city and work with the city to come up with something that fits in their budget. But what we couldn't do is we still couldn't use these drawings to cut the ramps out, so we were still doing them by hand. So then we learned about something called a CNC router, which is a computer numeric controlled router. And it's basically, this is what we used to hold here in our hands, and now this machine would just cut them out. So this is the same ramp panel that we cut, but of course the router cuts it very precisely. This was not a real expensive tool. It was kind of a hobby tool. That was how we started. The cost was probably about $15,000 for the CNC. And that worked so well that we said, well, we should get a better one. Because we were doing more and more of the components on the skate ramps on the machine. So we invested, this was about $150,000 for this machine. This was made in over near St. Cloud, actually. And we still, these ramps we did, they were all modular. So we build all these sections. Usually they were 6 feet wide. And then we would, so this is probably one whole skate park here ready to be loaded on a semi-truck and go out. It was very physical labor all the time. And by this time, the skateboarding was starting to come back. And almost all the employees that would even apply, we'd run ads in the Duluth News Tribune, and we would get 20-year-old guys. That's just kind of what happened. I think it was very skateboard driven. But we sort of needed that because it was really physical. So we had, these are the missile silos over here. But we had, these trucks and trailers were basically portable shops. So they were all tooled up with welders and screw guns and generator and gasoline and whatever. And we would drive these, we'd have a crew of 4 guys in a truck, and they'd go out to cities all over the country and set up the ramps. So this is a typical installation. We'd have a forklift there, and we just start to put these ramps together. And then this is what the finished product looked like. There was no exposed wood or anything. It was all galvanized steel. And we sourced out these materials that didn't need any maintenance or paint, and that were outdoor materials. So this is an example of a little bit larger park, and this is like a 1/6 of this park. This was over by the Wisconsin Dells, and this was about a $500,000 job for this one. And this was just going to be more slides of ramps, but it's not working. So in 2005, the missile base, we were kind of tired of that space, and we were doing pretty well. We had about 50 employees. We were working all over the country, and we decided we wanted our own building, and we wanted to kind of get back in town too. We didn't really like being out in the woods. So we found another really ratty old building, and we bought this. This was over in West Duluth. But what we liked about it is it was very linear. It was just a long, skinny building, so we could have a manufacturing line. There was no office, so we worked with the local architect to build the office on the roof, because there really wasn't an office, kind of just a little room. the deal with this building, it was also a brownfield site. So the company that was there before us made burial vaults, and there was a form oil in there when they pour the concrete in this form, and so the concrete vault would pop out. They had to have an oil in there. And when they were done with using that oil, they'd just go dump it over here outside. So this is the footprint of the building, and then this is the lot. It's a 4-acre lot. So this was all contaminated soil, and then there was just stuff, crap everywhere, concrete things and barrels, and they just, as you see, as we keep going here, their business model was as they generated waste and things they couldn't use, they just go throw it up in the back. So this is what the building looks like today. As we built these skate parks, and you can see from some of those slides that there was a lot going on, and it was really like the sculpture is the way we looked at it. So we wanted our office to kind of reflect more of a design statement, and it was. So we also built it sort of like a skate park, and this black material that's on the inside and the outside is the same surface material we put on our skate ramps. The company that, I don't know if any of you have seen the black box houses in Duluth over on Observation Hill, that's the same material, and David Selma is the architect on those and our office, and we started working together and doing this cladding on these buildings, and the company making the material was like, you can't do that, and we just kept doing it, and now they sell it as a product. So this is a really cool space. So we used to say this thing up top, we'd be loading trucks and unloading trucks and building parks. Maybe you're in Ohio somewhere. No, I'm not dissing Ohio. But we'd say there's got to be a better way to make a buck than doing this. Because it was a lot of work. The margins were low, so we weren't making a lot of money, per job. So we started looking in the dumpster because, besides, I don't know where you get your inspiration, but this is where we started getting ours. And basically what we saw is these expensive materials we had found to build the skate ramps, we were throwing the extra in the dumpster. And it just didn't really make any sense. So, and it didn't make any money either, it cost you money. But so we knew that this skating surface, we used black or brown, and we kind of tended towards black because it doesn't weather like this brown material. But we knew it was being used in the food service industry, and it's actually made in Tacoma, Washington, and it's called Richlite. Like Pizza Hut was using this material for a pizza peel, and we saw restaurants where like I'm sure you've all seen these long brown boards. They kind of look like wood, but they're not. And so we saw that, and we went and did some research and found that this material wasn't available at retail anywhere. So we started messing around just making cutting boards, which was a lot easier to make this than this whole thing right here. And then the side of the ramp was a plastic that we had found, a high-density polyethylene, kind of a thicker sheet good. And all this material we use in here, there's plywood, the skating surface, and the sides, it's all sheet goods. And that's where we came up with the name Good Sheet, because everything we make's out of a sheet good. So we started making Adirondack chairs out of this material, and it was literally my brother, my other partner, started doing this, and I started making Adirondack chairs. So I just kind of looked around, and I had little pieces, and I thought, well, I can make an Adirondack chair. Like every other house has 2 of them sitting in their yard. So we really decided to get away from skateboard ramps, which, as I said, we weren't really skaters, so that wasn't, it was really easy to do, to just kind of move away from that. Although we did build really nice skate ramps. And I'd always say, like, the astronauts don't actually build their ship, engineers do it, they just fly it. And so the skaters didn't build the ramps, we built them. Skaters don't know how to build ramps. So we started this Epicurean. These are some of the companies that we sell our products now, today. Crate and Barrel, my sister-in-law worked for them. They're in Chicago. and I sent her some of these cutting boards, and she got them to the cutting board buyer, and she liked them, and so that was our first big account. Which the lesson there is, use who you know, and because that does a lot, that opens doors for sure. We also make every Starbucks that you go into, we have products in their food cabinets. Like there's these little brown card holders and the little cake pop stands. It's like a little round, looks like a popsicle. They call it a cake pop. If you look, that's a black plastic, and we make all those too for them. So this is kind of more current images of these boards that we do. So we just kept expanding on the one cutting board, which this is really similar to the first board we made. We just added silicone feet onto it. We do a lot of shapes. That's a muddler for mixing a drink. So it's just, we make utensils now. This is just to give you an idea, I guess, of some of our product line. So we've also continued to upgrade our machines. So this is just a bigger CNC machine. It's really just, an evolution of us being on our knees holding these routers, and that's what this machine does. But it's all computerized. You can see all the cutting boards. So we really, with these products we try to create, it's called a nest. So you take these products and you nest them into the sheet. And of course you want to have as little space between the product as you can so you have less waste. So on this we'll have some waste around the edges, and then the shavings from the router bit cutting. This is just, this shows this is a twin table machine. So while it's cutting on one table, you can unload the other one. That's how that is intended to work. And it's twin heads, so there's two heads on the router. These are just some shots of our facility here. There's a lot of cutting boards, and this is all in Hawks boots. No, there's still a lot of manual labor. We have brought in more technology where this machine just puts labels on boards that run through it, and it also will print on the label, which is kind of important to get a SKU number on there, any information our client wants. We've always been into branding and creating brands with True Carrying and Law, and so even the boxes we buy, and they're branded, so when they go out, the people that accept these, they just know what it is right away before they even look at a label, a box mailing label or something. So that's sort of where Epicurion's at now. We ship to 60 different countries. We have reps all over the world, and we. I guess I don't know. I was going to say how many boards we make a year, but I don't even know where it's at. It's well over 1 million boards a year. So law, a lot of people say, what does law mean? And this is what it means. It's not laugh out loud. It's just lollygagger is basically what it is. And law is just a shortened version of that. It really sort of, lollygagger's someone who's lazy. Lays around, and we like that for making outdoor furniture. So this goes back a little ways. When we started making chairs, it looks like a skate ramp. You can see the skate ramps in the back, and we basically were using the skating surface and the plastic. It's difficult to really think out of the box sometimes, and we're like, well, a skate ramp looks like this. The chair is going to look like that. So that was just some prototypes. This was probably 2006, and that's sort of where we started to land with this chair. That's more what the Adirondacks look like today. The one big improvement, if I go back, these chairs were post-industrial material, and we don't make the materials. But the companies that make them, when they make this plastic, they're extruding it in a sheet, and then they trim the sheet, and they take all those trimmings and they re-grind them all up, and then they make another sheet out of it. So it's sort of like when you make cookies, I guess, and you have the extra dough and you make more cookies. And so this was post-industrial, and all we had was black. And we wanted to bring colors into this. And I started approaching companies that make this, and nobody was making post-consumer recycled HDPE sheet. There was other materials out there, but it wasn't a sheet good that we wanted. And I had a pretty good relationship with the vendor from the skate park days, so we sort of worked on it together. But this material that we buy now is literally from milk jugs that are reclaimed. They're collected, they're ground up, they're turned into these pellets, and then they add pigment when they make this. It's kind of like making taffy or something like that, not that I've ever done that. And then we buy these sheets, and this is just a nested file that's been cut, and it turns into a chair. And I guess the point is with this, when you recycle, a lot of that does become another product. And we can recycle this chair again, and we still recycle all of our waste now. So at Law, we really don't have any waste. We don't have a dumpster anymore, and we sell it. It's a revenue source for us, which is really significant, because to get rid of a dumpster is like $400. So if you're filling a dumpster, once or twice a month, it becomes expensive. This is sort of the evolution of the Adirondack chair, where we've gone. This was the same architect we worked with on our building, David Samoa. We became friends, and I kept asking him that we should collaborate on some furniture. So this is his stuff. We just kind of we just constantly making new stuff. That's what sort of my favorite thing to do it at work. This is kind of a cool chair. This Dean of Architecture at the University of Minnesota named Ralph Rapson. He died 5 years ago in his 90s. And he was a mid-century designer, authentic, and he drew this chair in 1939. And I met his son at a trade show in Minneapolis, and his son knew who we were, and he said, "Hey, my dad has all these chair drawings. Would you guys want to make one of them?" Or, a bunch of them, whatever. And so this was the one that came out of that. And this chair, it was made back in 1939, but it was wood with webbing on there. And so we sort of, it's obviously Ralph didn't draw it to be in plastic like this, but the fact he drew that in 39, I think is one of the funner parts of that. I probably shouldn't show that here. I probably shouldn't show this here either. So our two biggest accounts are these companies. Room and Board's based down in Golden Valley, and they have 15 or 16 stores in major metro areas all around the country. And Design Within Reach has 40 stores in, again, just major metros around the country. They don't have a store they did have one in Uptown. They don't have a store in Minnesota any longer. About half our business is at retail to consumers or with our retailers. The other half is contract projects, which this isn't going to run, but we'll do universities, restaurants, hotels, libraries, things like that, health clubs, and that side of our business is really growing on the contract side. So Law, we purchased a building about a mile from that other building I showed you. This was about a year and a half ago we bought this, and we refurbed it. It was in pretty rough shape. So we pretty much gutted it and cleaned it up. And these photos are a year old, but it's generally what it looks like now. It's pretty clean. Plastic doesn't create dust, so when you're manufacturing with it, you can have a fairly clean environment. Unlike a wood shop, if you've been in a wood shop. Our product ships flat mostly, so we've designed a way these chairs that the customer can put them together, which involves making instructions but also just designing it the right way so it's not difficult to do. So a lot of our product comes off the CNC, and there's a little bit of work done. So if it starts on the CNC, I think this kind of follows it. This is the raw sheet goods that we have to inventory, so we have material to make our orders. And we buy all this from Pennsylvania, from Scranton, Pennsylvania. There's a company there. This is just product, I guess, going out. This kind of shows some of the stuff we do. We make all bent paddles, taps, and that's just kind of another side thing that we got into. And we're also making taps right now for 3rd Street Brewery. They're in Cold Spring, Minnesota. And we're going to do a bunch of new ones for the brew house. And this is a pretty small part of our business, but it's just more fun, and collaborating with breweries is something we like to do, I guess. So we've always had these sheet goods, so we had an opportunity to distribute sheet goods. So we started this company called Intextural. Intextural is innovative architectural, and we just made up a word so we could get a URL for a website. And this is what Intextural does. They basically, we cover Canada. With some of the materials, we have the whole USA and Canada, and some of them are just the 11 Midwest states. Let's see. So these are the brands of materials that we distribute. This is the cutting board material. Plywood is a bamboo plywood sheet. This Metam is a name we came up with for the plastic that Lal uses. And then arbor wood is a thermally modified wood that's done here in Aiken, Minnesota, and we distribute that material for them. These are some other uses. Here's Salmala's, some of his stuff with the Richlite on the side. This is plywood panels. You'd find it in a room like this for architectural and sound dampening use. It's another one of the black box houses. So sustainability has always been built in. When we built skate parks, we sourced out, materials that we thought weren't hazardous. We weren't using hazardous materials in our process, so employees weren't in contact with that. So we found, like, for the plywood as an example, plywood was called CCA, or chromium copper arsenic, was a treatment they did to make it work outside, or treated lumber. And now that treatment, and there's a plant in Duluth that does it, and it's more of a biodegradable and non-hazardous. It doesn't have chromium and arsenic in it. I believe it still has copper in it, which is where the green comes from. But even back to the skate parks, we were really trying to find materials and create processes that we didn't have waste. So we're over 50 million milk jugs we recycled now. All we did is took the weight of the sheets we buy, and we know how many milk jugs. There's 8 per pound, so it's easy to do the math. We are a member of 1% for the Planet, which Patagonia founded. And what that means is we give 1% of our gross sales, it's not our profit, to pre-approved groups and organizations like COGS, who are building a mountain biking trail. And these groups have to become beneficiaries of 1%, so they have to apply for that. So here's the COGS trail. We really like to do things local with this because we see the impact. It helps build relationships locally, and we're giving something back to our community. Sustainable Twin Ports, we've given money to for 3 years, and they work with businesses around town to create sustainability plans. Whether it's from changing out your light bulbs or trying to water your lawn less, or recycle programs, things like that. They'll work with companies to do that. Friends of the Boundary Waters, we've given them money for almost 10 years now, and they just work on anything Boundary Waters related and clean water as well. Climate Generation is people here know who Will Steger is? He's a polar explorer. The guy's amazing, like his adventures and exploration that he's done in Antarctica and and the Arctic. And he's from Richfield, Minnesota, but he lives up by Ely. And he's an older guy now. He was pushing 70. But he's got records for mushing like across Antarctica. And he was the first one by dog sled team to go to the North Pole. And so he's really fighting climate change right now, and particularly because he's seen the poles and how the ice is melting. And so what he does is he works towards education, in usually grade school, but education on climate change. And all these companies we work with, they're not for profit, and all their money comes from donations. So they survive, by companies helping them out. Just kind of more local stuff we've done. We've teamed up with some businesses over here, and we've cleaned up. Every spring we go and clean up a creek and we plant trees, and it's just a one-day deal, but it's a lot of fun. And these are some of the areas in Duluth that we've done that. So it kind of looks like this. It's kind of crazy once you start getting actually into the creeks around here, how much stuff is in there. And then we plant trees too. And that's just been a really fun thing to do. So that's kind of it.
So what questions do you have for Greg?
Yes.
Those first 4 years working on your knees,
Yeah.
how many hours were you doing a week?
We worked every day. I was 33 when we started that, and so I wasn't married. I didn't have kids, which that's not your question, I know. But what it allowed us to do, my brother and my partner was the same, is we could just work all day. So we'd go to, we lived in Minneapolis, but every day we'd drive early in the morning. Like there was times we'd start at 5 because we needed the whole day to get everything done. We'd drive to Home Depot. We had 2 pickup trucks. We'd load up the trucks. We'd go to the shop, build ramps, go eat lunch, go back to Home Depot, get more wood, and then go back, and we'd be done at 10. And I'm not exaggerating that. It was just we had to. There was the 3 of us, and we were selling everything, we were building everything, and we'd go and install it all, and it was just a lot of work. And so don't get into the skate park business for sure. Just don't do it. But it's gotten so much better now. Now it's a 40-hour work week, and so. But yeah, those first 4 years were pretty tough. Yeah.
So you said you sell your waste.
Yeah.
Who do you sell that to?
There's a broker down in Mound, Minnesota called Choice Plastics, and that company buys industrial waste, in usually HDPE form, and then they're a reseller of it. So they've created relationships with companies, and we know that our material goes to a company that makes agricultural drainage pipes. So it's these kind of big sort of corrugated black pipes. And I found them there in Minnesota, but our broker, we have a great relationship, so I'm not going to just go around him and go right to them. But that's what it's the main use of that material. Yeah.
Yeah, how was your process to expand into international markets?
Yeah, it wasn't that hard really. She asked how we got into international markets, and we do trade shows, and that's something you have to do. You got to go. I was just in Chicago the last 4 days doing a trade show, and to get out there and show people what you do and make connections. And trade shows are kind of expensive, and they take time, but that's how we did it. So we would go to these shows. We were in Chicago, and a guy from the UK, company called Gilbert's, came into our booth, said, "Do you have a distributor in the UK?" We didn't. So he took the product, and then he started introducing us to other distributors that he knew that were in Europe. And now we do a trade show every year in Frankfurt, Germany. And now it's usually, we're not so much adding distributors because we ship to 60 countries with the cutting boards. With the furniture, it's a little different, but I've been working on more international for that. I just went on, with the governor, I went on a trade mission to Mexico in August, and we met with 8 potential distributors, and we picked one. So it's really about going out there and you know, finding people and getting out in the world. So yeah.
You've created a really strong workplace culture at all of your companies. Can you talk a little bit about your management style and how that's played out with the workplace culture you've created?
Yeah, I guess you know, we really try to find people that work hard and are motivated. And I don't like managing people that much. Even one of Rick's questions was kind of related to that. But it's difficult, you know, and I don't want to just sit and manage people and micromanage. And so we really try to find people that, and they sort of weed themselves out. But I also like to collaborate a lot. So we have, you know, I don't just walk in and say, here's what you're doing. I say, what do you want to do? How do you want to do this? And just try to treat people with respect. You know, that's a huge part of it. And, you know, we're all a team. So everybody, and I think at Law, because I'm at Law, my partners are at Epicureans, and we do have a little bit different style. But at Law, it really feels like a team effort. And, you know, there's 40 employees there, and everyone knows everybody, and they work really well together. And I think, you know, when you have that, you don't have to manage as much. Now, I don't know if I'm missing something, but yeah.
In the early days with True Ride, did you have like a vision that you were working towards, and how has that vision changed?
Yeah, you know, it's funny, after UMD, for some reason, I just didn't want to go work in an office. So my vision there, it just simply was like, I want to go work with my hands for a while and do something like that. And that's where you know, where the building ramps kind of came in. Maybe it was sort of nostalgic or a lot of naivete for sure. But I think our vision was build a really quality product, you know, as best we could. And try to grow. You know, we definitely wanted to grow the company. We never would have thought we're going to be cutting boards and chairs for sure. That just no way. And my business partner versus my brother, who's my business partner as well. You know, we talked about how many skate parks we could build in a month. And I never thought we could build more than one a month because of how much work it was. And towards the end, then we were doing 8 a month was our average. You know, because we had more people and the machines and all that. We built about 450 skate parks. And we sold that in 2007. So we just did it for 10 years, which is kind of crazy. You know, it's already almost 8 years ago now. So. Yeah.
What is your niche for your outdoor furniture? Is it just the recycled part of it that you sort of...
Yeah, I think what people like about it is it's made in the USA. The design we try to do, you know, the Adirondack chair, of course, is not unique, but we try to do a unique version. And then almost everything else we make is a unique design. We're not trying to copy someone. So, and then they really like the recycled content. You know, when I'm just thinking at, say, a trade show, what do people gravitate towards? A lot of outdoor furniture is made in China, and the quality's not very high. You know, even our chairs are really heavy. They weigh 45 pounds for an Adirondack. Where you can go to Menards and buy an Adirondack for $16, and it's probably even made in the USA. There's a company out east that does it, but you know they're not very strong. They're not going to last forever. The design is pretty generic. And it's just, they'll blow off your deck in a strong wind. You know, so I don't know, it's people looking for a higher quality and then those things, that's really our niche. Yeah.
Do you guys ever like make anything besides kitchen, like cutting boards and chairs?
Yeah, a lot of tap handles. I really want to get into that. I'm kidding. There's a company since we've been doing this that I found that is like taphandles.com, and it's crazy like what they're doing. And they design everything in the U.S. and it's all made overseas. But I don't know. Chairs are fun. And I like the industry a lot and the people that we work with. And there's just so much to do. And all we do are plastic mostly. You know, I showed one steel frame chair, but we could keep expanding into other materials. And so I don't think we're really gonna, do much more. Trying to think, there's like we're making a water bottle filling station for a guy, and that would be a whole other market, But it's how we make it is kind of similar to what we're doing. Do you have something up?
Do you hold any patents on any of the different products? And you mentioned that you have a dumpster. Where do you look for inspiration to a dumpster?
Well, it was just, what the inspiration really was there's got to be more money to be made instead of throwing the material away that was it. It was like, I think we could do more with turning these chunks into a product. And that was really the inspiration there. It wasn't, a design sense or anything. And the other, you asked another.
Do you have patents on any of the products?
Yeah, it's hard to patent something that really isn't, technological advancement or something really proprietary. And we, just in that Adirondack chair, it's really hard to patent. There's our fastening system's pretty unique, but it's used a lot to fasten tabletops to frames, so it's hard to even say. We innovated this way to put chairs together, but it wasn't an innovation in a fastening, like a joint. So we have like a dress patent for the overall look of our brand. But so someone couldn't just come in and do a Lal or an Epicurean exactly the same way, but you can make a cutting board. Yeah.
You talk about ethics in the workplace.
Yeah.
Can you give any examples of really difficult decisions you've had to make?
Yeah.
Business or with people that you're working with?
I read that question too. Rick wrote that down, and so I thought about it a little bit. And I think one of the things is just treating our accounts as exclusive and really, ethically, like, and I don't know if this is, if you mean more morality or just like, how we work with someone, but, when we work with a customer and we have an understanding, we're going to follow, whether it's verbal or a contract, we're going to do what we said we're going to do. And an example of that would be the two big retailers I showed you, Room and Board and Design Within Reach. They both have an Adirondack chair, but they're different. And we don't sell those chairs to anybody else, just them. And we just don't blur the lines. And I guess that's been really important to me, and it's proven its work because we continue to grow and work with companies. And had we been doing stuff on the side, like, we're going to take that Room and Board chair, we're going to sell it down in Mexico, or we're going to ship it to the UK and sell it. And they don't want us to do that. And it would take a while for them to find out, but as soon as they found out, then it just, you start to burn bridges and just erode that relationship. So, and otherwise, I don't know. I can't think of anything that, that we've done. But I would say the biggest is just following through with what is expected.
Great. If you were to give advice to our students of 2 or 3 things, skills that they should master or they should work on, what would they be?
Find really good knee pads for working on your knees. But Rick and I were talking earlier. With an English degree and geography, I thought I wanted to be an environmental writer was what I thought I was going to do. But I think having some diversification, because as we started getting into business, now there was accounting, and of course we were doing manufacturing too, but just having sort of a broader base, and where the literature helped me out was that I wrote everything, so all of our copy and our brochures and on websites and anything that had to be written, I could do that. So that helped, and I guess. You can't. I wouldn't worry too much if you think you don't know something, because you'll just figure it out. Just get in there, and also having partnerships. I have a really good friend. Actually, he's the brother of the guy who started Rollerblade, and that whole family's entrepreneurial. And he started this company it's a trailer, a small sort of utility sports trailer. Like he markets it where you put kayaks on it or camping gear or bikes, or, you know, and you pull it behind the car and it's small. So instead of like the roof rack cargo area, it's a trailer, so you can get a lot more gear in there. And he's totally doing it by himself. And so he's got no one else to answer the phone or help put a tire on a trailer. And it's, you know, we talk about it all the time. It's not even money that he needs. He just needs another set of hands and someone to pick up some slack. And so I think with us having this partnership has worked really well, especially from the beginning. And then we've been 3 equal partners, and we've always done everything that way. We had to all 3 agree on something to really move forward on it. So. Yes.
Are you having trouble finding workers?
Yeah, you know, in some areas, we are. Like the CNC operators that's a, you know, vocational trained thing that they do to run those machines. I can't run them. And so there's turnover there because we don't pay the highest in that field because we're sort of an entry level. What they do for us, they put the sheet on and everything's already programmed by somebody else, and they you know, to say they're button pushers is wrong, but you know, they just don't have to do some of the skills. So as they learn more with us, they can usually move on, and that's how we and we know that, but that's a little bit hard to find. The other areas, and I'm just talking, that would be both companies. We don't have a lot of turnover, and we're not always hiring salespeople or marketing people. We always did everything in-house, like everything. We built websites, we did our photography, and we've started to move out beyond that now. And I think that's been a benefit too, because you can find much more talented, higher skilled people, you know, when it's a firm. Like we built a website in-house recently at Law. The guy did not do it right at all after 1.5 years. It was supposed to launch in 8 months. So after 1.5 years, we had to just make a change, and we found a firm in town that fixed that. Now we're rebuilding another one. So I think going outside, you know, if you don't know something, you know, try to figure it out. But if you know you can't, go outside.
Thanks, Greg.
Yeah.